Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Inside the Wave. It's John Burrows here with my co-host Isaac Popper. We're going to be talking a little about Tulane's dominating win against UAB this past Saturday. Tulane dropped 71 points. I definitely did not see that coming. I thought Tulane would win. I thought Tulane would win by a lot, but 71 points, and that is correct. I'll say it one more time. You heard it correctly. 71 points. How do you the biggest thing that I'm thinking of is if you're UAB, what do you do after the game? I mean, if you're on the UAB defense, you just gave up 71 points. Like, what is the post game locker room coach talk? Like, what do you even say to your team when they just give up 71 points? Like, do you pitch the whole like, like we're closer than you think, we're really just a few fixes away? Because if you give up 71 points, you're more than just a few fixes away. I know Isaac's got a lot of great stats. When you drop 71 points, it's sure to be historical in a multitude of ways. Isaac, what can you tell our listeners about Tulane's historic victory over UAB?
Burrows Report, great to be back with you. Did some solo ones this week, and boy, I'm glad you're back because that was incredible. Saw Coach Summerall today. He's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "Good." Not my best day. And then I was like, "Wait, actually, I'm doing great because Saturday was awesome, Coach." He's like, "Good."
71 points good.
Yeah, kudos to John Summerall. It's been quite the impressive run for Tulane over the last few weeks. They're averaging 58 points in conference play 2 weeks into the season. And I'd argue that they actually haven't played the bottom of the barrel in the American Conference. Florida, I thought until we played them, at least after the non-conference play, I thought they were probably the fifth best team in the American, only behind us, Memphis, and the schools that don't pass the ball. So I'm starting to rethink that. Maybe North Texas, but I'm sure we're going to go and embarrass North Texas in a few weeks as well.
Oh yeah.
After we go and
Oh yeah.
embarrass France.
I wonder, you talk about 58 points a game so far. I wonder where that would rank. We can look this up later among Division I basketball schools from last year. Because it sounds like a
58.
basketball number.
Yeah, it really does. I kept looking back. 71. Wow. Well, part of it, in fairness, was Trent Dilfer making some poor decisions to go for it on fourth
Absolutely.
down. As we know, I'm one of the biggest proponent of analytics, and I do believe in fourth down, but I'm pretty sure the analytics models, I'll have to check. I didn't even need to check on this one. I'm pretty sure when it's 4th and 10 from inside your own 30, you shouldn't go for it, but I'd have to recheck the models and see what they say given the score. So, in
I don't think
fairness,
you do.
it wasn't necessarily. I in some ways actually it was a more dominant performance versus USF, winning 45-10, believe it or not, than this week. Tulane this week was 90th in EPA per play on offense. Last week they were 87th. Last week was a much more dominant defensive performance, holding South Florida to second percentile in EPA per play. UAB was close to that when they were at negative 28 EPA per play after EPA total after 45 plays. And then they started to pick it up a little bit at the end. On play 45, they had a 65-yard run that was able to give them some good room to go. 73 yards, catch to Amari Thomas in the fourth quarter. But at that point, their win probability was already 0.0%. The game was over when they did all their damage. So before it was garbage time, Tulane was absolutely dominant, really just blowing the doors off this team. 71 points, over 50 points through three quarters. Ridiculous.
Tell us a little bit about that number, 71 points. Where does that rank in Tulane history and Tulane FBS history? Where put that into perspective for us a little bit historically.
Great question, John. I was glad to actually be home for this one. This was the first game of the season that I did not attend and wasn't on the sidelines for myself. I decided to stay back, and I'm glad I did because I knew it would be one where I needed my laptop, John. I was looking up the record. I couldn't even keep up. I was trying to follow the game, and Tulane scores. I'm like, okay, Keith Brown, is this his first multi-touchdown game of his career? Wait. Oh, we just hit over 40 points. So when was the last time we had 3 over 40? Okay. And they kick off, and the first play, I'm in the middle of tweeting. Tulane hasn't had 3 straight 40-point games since the 98 season, the undefeated one. Oh, and Tulane just got a pick 6. Okay. When was the last time we had 50? Rogers' first interception of his career goes for a touchdown. That's actually his second second takeaway of his career. Both were touchdowns. I can't get that tweet off before we've got another big play and Jalen Geiger's got his first team.
Oh my goodness,
unbelievable, John.
You know, they say that in a person's life, whenever your football team is winning, the little things are just a little bit sweeter, you know, like your food tastes a little bit better, the air smells a little bit nicer. You wake up feeling about 71 points better after a game like this.
I seriously did. It was a fun night out on Saturday. Hopefully the players on the team got to celebrate the win as well. 1 point shy of the most points against an FBS team in school history. 72
what are we doing?
versus ULL was the record, and it's the second most points versus any opponent since the 1930s. So just that ULL game of 72 is the only game that we've scored 70 plus. Actually, the only game we've scored 65 plus. The only conference game we scored 65 plus in ever in Tulane history. The only game outside of ULL since the 30s against anybody with 70 plus, as we scored 66 versus Southern Miss. In Michael Pratt's first career game, actually, he lit it on fire, although he didn't actually have to do too much. Only threw for about 150 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns. I believe it was 3 that game, as Cam Carroll led the way with 3 touchdowns. Tajay Spears, as a reserve, had 2 touchdowns himself on only a couple of carries. It was a dominant performance. First team to score 70 in a road conference game since 2020 among all the teams in FBS. We're one of 2 teams, along with James Madison earlier this season, who did it against former Tulane not only head coach, but athletic director Mac Brown, to score 70 on the road in any of the last 3 seasons. Just us and James Madison. We're the 7th team since 2000 to score 70 points on the road with under 200 passing yards. And that includes against FCS opponents, by the way. We're one of the 7. And it's the first time that they've scored 40 points in 3 straight games since the final 3 games of the undefeated 98 season.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Also, one of my favorite like little football nerd things is called a scoregami. For those of y'all that aren't familiar, a scoregami occurs when the score of a game happens, the final results of the game. It's the first time in the history that has been the final result of the game. So, for example, Tulane's victory over UAB this week was a scoregami because Tulane won 71-20, and never in the history of college football has a game ended with a final score of 71-20 until Tulane's victory against UAB. So that's definitely a lot of fun. I think you touched a little bit, Isaac, on the pick 6 and some of the stats that you were looking up about that. What can you tell us about that pick 6?
Yeah, well, Tulane now has 4 pick 6s on the season. Their first 3 interceptions, if you remember, were all interception return touchdowns, but they've had a couple of interceptions over the last few weeks, so that's no longer the case. However, the 4 pick 6s is double what any other team has in the entire country. There's a few that have 2, and nobody has 3, and nobody else has 4 or more.
Yeah, it makes you think if Tulane, I mean, the losses against Kansas State and Oklahoma were tough, although they were very, very close games. So, looking ahead a little bit here, if Tulane wants to make the playoffs, it might not be all the way in our control anymore. So putting together wins is great, but putting together dominating wins that stand out on a resume, that could go a long way towards the end of the season. Someone's performance who stood out to me was Rayshawn Pleasant, friend of the show. We actually had him on a few weeks ago after he scored a touchdown in week 1, and he had another touchdown today as a kick returner, or not today, against UAB this past Saturday. He's breaking some records too, right, Isaac?
That's correct, John. I'll get to them in a moment, but as far as the database that I use goes back, which is to 2000, This is the first time ever, and we're only 6 games in right now. Wait till you see what other juice is in the juice box, because I heard there's more juice. But the last time, if there even was a previous time, the last time that there was a team that had a pick six and a kick return touchdown in the same game multiple times in a season was not this century. And potentially, I don't know, I'm sure it has happened at some point, but potentially it has never happened before until this season.
Wow.
With Rayshon Pleasant having 2 kick return touchdowns in the games that Chris Rogers had a interception return touchdown, and was it Grubbs that had the other one?
Grubbs had a pick six against Jackson Arnold in Oklahoma.
So, which game was the other kick return touchdown? It was in Lafayette, and the pick six was
the pick six. I think was week one,
right?
Oh, Jack also had a pick six.
Yes,
you're right.
It was the game of Jack Chenchow.
A future Tulane superstar. I've been on that one. You can check my history with Fear the Wave. I've been on that one ever since he got on campus.
Yeah, I was very excited to see him in the press conference room when we were over in Lafayette, and had mentioned on our game recap pod after the Lafayette game that was somebody you had been touting. Let's get back to
good kid.
Let's get back to the sorry, I have a quick correction on my last stat.
Okay,
the last stat holds true for road games, multiple road games in a season. It has been done before for a mixture of home and road games or just at home. However, it's only happened 2 other times this entire century. And tougher to do that on the road. So we're the only
absolutely
on the road. Going back to specifically Rayshon Pleasant's kick return touchdown, he's the first player with 2 kick return touchdowns in the same season in Tulane history, which is just mind-boggling, but shows you how difficult it is to return a kick to the house in college.
Yeah, absolutely. We've only played 6 games. You know, we're halfway through the regular season.
And he's only taken 6 returns through those 6 games. It's hard to believe, but Shoddy Clayton Johnson was the starter, and now they don't want to kick to him. That was his only return of the day, and he was 3rd in all-purpose yards on the team. Also, he could average 7 yards per return over the next 4 so that he meets the minimum qualification, and he would have the school record for kickoff return average yardage. Again, he only needs 7 yards per return. That's almost impossible not to get.
I could get 7 yards on a kick return if I mean, that's assuming I catch the ball. But he's got the record if he wants it.
If it was blocked as well as Ray thinks, then I think I could have returned it to the house. However, Coach Sumrall and Coach McMahon disagreed. They said, obviously, the blockers did a great job, Bauman and others doing their job, always on special teams, Reggie Brown, Shaquem Laister, however, Makai Williams. However, they said Rayshon Pleasant, elite speed, and that should not have been a touchdown if it wasn't for Ray.
Oh, absolutely. He's got great vision. He doesn't dance around too much. He finds the hole and he hits it and he's gone. All you could ask for in a returner.
Big Play Ray is the first FBS player this season with multiple kick return touchdowns, and he's just the 3rd player with 2 road kick return touchdowns over the last 3 seasons. The only other player in their entire Tulane career to return multiple touchdowns, and he did in different seasons, multiple kick return touchdowns, was Michael Pierce, who's 3rd in school history in all-purpose yards, only behind Matt Forte and Meweldy Moore. Just wow. Big Play Ray.
Wild stuff. I believe there were a lot of upsets this past week, and obviously you saw Vanderbilt take down Alabama was one of the big one. I think like 4 of the top 10 teams in the country lost. Because of that, I think I correct me if I'm wrong. I think Tulane might hold another national record in terms of a conference winning streak.
That's right, John. This is one I've been watching for a couple of months as I started to make my list over the summer.
You've been telling me about it.
And here's how it started before the season. Georgia, 27, lost. Michigan, 22, lost. Washington, 15, lost. Florida State, 11, lost.
Many times.
Well, this is in conference. This is consecutive
Right.
conference game win streaks. So in the conference, Tulane and Bama were tied at 10 entering the season. We're tied going into this week after Bama beat number 1 Georgia, and then they went down to Vanderbilt. So now Tulane is in full possession of this streak. They've averaged 58 points over the last 2 games and have 12-game win streak. SMU, whose last loss in conference play in a regular season game, because that's what counts as conference play, was
Right.
to Tulane when Tulane put up over 50 points, which was the last time, which was my earlier tweet before we got to 60 and 70, was the last time that Tulane scored 50 points against an FBS team. They'd put up, I believe, 59 as well against Morgan State. SMU was also Tulane's loss, including conference championships, and their only loss in conference play since they beat in conference play, regular season or playoffs, since they beat SMU to break SMU's prior streak. Then Liberty behind them. Schedule doesn't count, though. They've also never lost a conference game as they joined FBS last year. And then
Right.
Toledo behind them. So Tulane in
Yeah.
sole possession with SMU on their tails.
That'll do it. That'll do it. But I mean, SMU doesn't get it unless Tulane loses. So if Tulane loses, it doesn't matter if SMU keeps winning because it'll reset. But I think I saw
Well,
Tulane right now statistically has the highest chance of winning out from here on out of any FBS team. Obviously, those numbers are generated by computers that know more than me, but also know less than me in other regards. So it doesn't matter unless it happens on the field. Things can happen between now and then. It'll change those odds, but you got to like where Tulane sits right now.
I agree, John. I'm not too surprised. The only thing is, I'm a little surprised Liberty doesn't have the highest chance to win out with that cupcake schedule. I expected them
Right.
to go undefeated this season just because they don't really play anybody. Maybe Sam Houston State. They were supposed to play Appalachian State, but that game got canceled because of the hurricane. So they have a below 132 average strength of schedule when using the analytics, which shouldn't be possible because there are only 132 teams in FBS. But if you include the FCS teams
Because they
in those
skip the
analytical
game.
models, then their average opponent is actually worse than the worst FBS opponent. So I'm a little surprised that Liberty it doesn't have a higher chance to win out, but otherwise, why not Tulane, right? Obviously, Tulane lost 2 games, 2 close ones, had the chance to take the lead in the fourth quarter. Some penalties hurt them. Many of the penalties deserved, many of the penalties probably not deserved as well. But obviously, a game-tying touchdown call back against Kansas State would really change things right now, and Tulane would certainly be ranked if they only had 1 loss and it was to a top 20 team. Regardless, this team is having their foot on the gas pedal, and they are a force to be reckoned with. They have now outscored their first 2 AAC opponents by a cumulative 86 points, which is more than the cumulative 65 points they beat their 8 opponents last year when they went 8-0. John Sumrall era is legitimate. Last year, a lot of my analytical models did not like Tulane that much. They thought that Tulane was a pretty mediocre team. That is not the case this year. They think that Tulane is a top 10 to 15 team, depending on what analytical you model, not resume based, future oriented, grading all the plays that have happened, not the scores, and how the plays should have led to scores in terms of expected points added, no matter where you look, basically a top 10 team in the country. And then T-Shoe Index has Tulane. If you don't take into account the resume and just look at who are the best teams this season, they have Tulane on a bye in the college football playoffs. That's not going to happen because they have 2 losses. But if Tulane can sneak into the college football playoff, going to need some help getting Boise State out of there in the Mountain West. Watch out.
Absolutely. No, I mean it's great to see all the things that you and I talked about before the season and we're watching to have those confirmed by the numbers now. But it's a great time to be a Tulane fan. If you've made it this far in the video, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, comment, tell us what you're thinking. I mean, you're clearly a big Tulane fan. Maybe you're just actually a big fan of Isaac Popper, I'm a big fan of Isaac Popper. So who knows? Either way, drop a like. Be a part of this historic time for Tulane football. It's great to be back, Isaac. It's great to be watching Tulane football. I'm excited to see what the future has in store for this team.
Happy to have you back, John. Should be a good week of practice. Hopefully, the players are enjoying their bye week, well deserved, and then we'll get back to it versus Rice.